Record. Let's see how many dogs start barking and everything else that is going to happen the second we start
Of course.
videoing. Oh my goodness. So there was a conversation. It wasn't a conversation, was it? There was a video on the TikTok that Catherine sent me this morning, and I'm like, and Catherine sent it with like a question. And I'm like, well, why don't we ask? Okay, let's ask this question. And so I stitched with the person and I asked this question, and they didn't want a conversation. We'll just put it that way. But the question kind of, well, the thought, Catherine's question was, what is unrealistic um, romance, right? And the video was, it started
Yeah.
out really cute, but the video, Catherine was like, this,
The the
oh,
video was she went into how a man had come up to her book booth and was asking her if her books were about unrealistic expect romance with unrealistic expectations.
there we go.
And, which that's kind of my first question would have been, what do you consider unrealistic expectations? We all have different expectations. So talk to me more about that. But she immediately jumped to the assumption that loving and cherishing your woman is an unrealistic expectation in a man.
It's not
And
just
in
that. She started with an unrealistic, well, unrealistic.
Well,
She
yeah,
had
she
a bad
started
attitude
with,
about him
yeah,
coming up to her booth in the
to,
first place.
yeah, sh the very first thing was that she was already on edge because a man came to her table. And I was like, so you already jumped to assumptions and you put a stereotype that a
Right
male
off the bat.
reader can't approach your table without putting you on edge.
And I'm like,
And
put
to an
a sign on
extent,
your table that says women only if you don't want men looking at your book or talking to you.
and to an extent, I can understand that a lot of romance readers probably get this question. Um, you know, I know I have. I have just written high epic fantasy. That is not. It has a little teeny tiny bit
Yeah, yours is
of
not
a
romance based
romance
at
subplot,
all.
but
Yeah.
barely there. But I have gotten that question on does this have romance? And generally, I find out whenever I ask about it, I find out that they are actually looking at it for their woman, and she likes a little bit of romance in her books. So you dig a little deeper, you can find out what is going on with
Yeah,
these
why are
guys.
they asking the question in the first place? This
And
is an
I even had,
opportunity.
yeah, I had one guy with my books one time that whenever I explained my little tiny bit of a romance subplot, barely. And I'm like, it's basically kind of, I wouldn't even call it slow burn because I just suck at romance, but I'm like, the guy doesn't get the girl at the end. And he was like, oh my God, that is so relatable.
Oh my
So
goodness.
whenever you dig in deeper with these guys, you can find out what the unrealistic expectations are. And for some of them, it's just, why does the dude always get the girl? Because
There you
there's some
go.
dudes out there like, that is not
Not the
realistic.
way it goes. That's so funny. And by the way, hi, I'm Donita. I don't write romance. I have not written or published any romance. I have not published any fiction at all. I'm a nonfiction writer mostly. There will be something coming out later this year, but it's not there yet. And this is Catherine, our oldest child, millennial type person who wrote her first 450-page novel before she graduated from our homeschool. And yeah, she starts it out with a massacre. So I don't know where she got this, but
I
uh,
really don't write romance.
yeah,
But
Catherine doesn't care for romance, but there's relationships in the books.
and well, I can appreciate so like Jane Austen, Jane Eyre. I think Jane Eyre was kind of the
But we
first
didn't
time
even get introduced to Jane Austen or really Jane Eyre until you were older.
older.
Maybe
Yeah.
older middle school, maybe lower early high school
Jane Eyre was probably the first romance-ish book I
that
read,
you read. Yeah.
and that I actually got all the way through. Um,
Yeah, because
and
you usually
found
do not.
no, I usually do not. Like I've tried the Janet Oak, um, what is that book series called? Um,
Oh my goodness, it just
the
left
Love Comes
me.
Softly.
Love Come Softly. Yeah.
I
Which I
tried,
had read them whenever they kind of like first come
yeah,
out.
I had some friends whenever I was in high school. They tried to kind of let me borrow them, and I literally sat in their hallway
You were
and
just
tried the
not.
first chapter. They were not my cup of tea.
Yeah.
So, it was just I don't think they were bad, written badly or anything. It's just
No,
I will be the first to admit that romance is just not my cup of tea.
not. Yeah.
But I
It never
have,
has been, and I will say that we did not encourage it.
yeah,
And just from a homeschool mom perspective, we did not encourage romance. Whenever there was a kissing couple on the TV, we would all go, "Ooh, yuck!" We trained them to do that.
yeah.
And I didn't read, I like had not read Jane Austen at all until the girls hit high school. And I didn't realize how much character building information, there was in those books. I thought they were just romance. And
The
I don't want
no,
my girls to think that that's their goal. Okay.
right.
So
Yeah.
we read
They
biographies and, real life
and
stuff instead.
the book I can remember the best with a romance subplot in it would have been Little Women. And you
Yep.
not only get to see them fall in love, but then you get to see at least Meg work through her marriage with her husband. And, I appreciated the realism of it.
Right.
Now, even though my favorite genre to write is fantasy. I love fantasy books. I love fantasy stories. I do enjoy a little bit of a romance subplot in there. I enjoyed The Hunger
We
Games,
started with
probably.
the Hobbit and the, Lord of the Rings.
Hmm.
I actually read The Hobbit to you. There's no romance in
Yeah.
that.
But, as far as like as I came to be more of an author and get into the author world and all of that, and now as an adult, I've come to really appreciate like the Hunger Games, the Katniss, Peeta, Gale relationship is like, oh my gosh,
So
that
relatable.
was so relatable. And
Hmm.
they're kids still. I mean, they're teenagers, early 20s maybe. They are and there's so much going on with them with their different traumas and then how they're relating to each other. It's so good.
Hmm.
But then what I've come to find with a lot of the mainstream romantasy books, and I don't even touch romance, the mainstream romance anymore. I have a few select author friends that I
Is
will
it
read their
actual
romance.
romance or is it just
See,
smut?
that's the thing. That is the thing. A lot of these popular romance novels um read like this. The guy is emotionally unavailable, he's rude, borderline abusive, but it's okay because he's rich and traumatized and willing to commit murder in her honor. And then meanwhile, the like female main character has no real growth arc. She just trauma bonds her way into healing the broken stallion. And then like the key to their forever love is just bedroom gymnastics and three sarcastic one-liners. So, it's not, there's no love and cherishing as this author in the TikTok video was complaining
Was
about
trying, yeah.
like the
That
unrealistic expectation that is
was
being set here.
was love and cherish. And it's like you didn't even ask him if that was the case. You're just
Right.
automatically
And
assuming.
I
And
have
then
to,
I made a video stitching with her of, hey, you missed an opportunity here. Even if you didn't agree with what where the conversation might have gone, it might have given you fodder for another book, but she missed the opportunity. And then she accused me of just arguing with her about a woman expecting. Why would I argue with her that a woman should respect to be loved or expect to be loved and cherished? And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. I've been married for 35 years. I understand love and cherish, but I also understand times in your life when you're not receiving that. It doesn't matter how much a person loves and cherishes you, sometimes they're not given it in a way that you can receive it.
yeah.
Or
And it's not to say that, I don't think a few men that I have met should probably pick, would learn a thing or two if they picked up a romance novel and was told, okay, this is what women want. They might pick up a few good tips.
tips, they might.
But,
But if they're
but
not taking care of their
overall,
heart issues, and if they're not dealing with their own issues, then it could seem unrealistic to them. And it could be like, how do I do this? This guy
right.
was perfect. And I've had people look at Paul and I and say, well, you got the perfect husband. And they just blow it off like that. And it's like, I live with him. I can tell you,
Mm-hmm.
it's not
No. Well,
absolute
and
perfection.
my response has been to that, we worked for it.
And
My
we
husband and I
continue.
get so
Yes.
many compliments on our good relationship, and it's like we worked for it.
Yeah.
We went to therapy. We did the inner work. We
And you
built on
continue to
ourselves.
work on it. It's
And
not something you
you
just
learn to love and cherish yourself as much as the next person.
that's
So,
key. That is key. You can say all you want, I want to be loved and cherished. But if you don't have respect for yourself, and if you aren't quote unquote loving and cherishing yourself, and I'm not going to go into the whole self-love thing, but if you don't respect yourself, then you're not going to receive, no matter how much he tries to love and cherish you, you're not going to receive that well
yeah.
because you don't, if your hormone, and I brought that up in a video on that. At one point, my hormones were so out of whack. It didn't matter what anybody did. I did not feel loved. Period. End of story. Did not feel loved. It was a hormonal issue. Once I got my hormones back on track, then I was able to look back and see all of the loving, cherishing things that people around me were trying to do for me. Um, it just sometimes you're not in that place. And then there's the love languages. And the love languages is huge. My love language is words of affirmation. Paul has no clue. Every once in a while, he'll pop off with, and I'm so proud of you for doing this, or thank you for doing that, but that's not very often. It's few and far between. Um, so I have to learn to receive his love in the way that he gives.
Hmm.
And he's an acts of service person. And honestly, guys, I'm either busy or exhausted half the time. So acts of service sometimes is very hard for me to do. And I have to let him know that, yes, I would love to do this for you, but I need a little bit of time, to
Hmm.
process or to set my project aside or whatever so that I can. And,
Yeah.
that is where that conversation is so important. It's not automatic.
Yeah.
It's not
And
automatic.
my husband and I have talked a lot about the romance book discussion because I mean romance is very popular right now. Romantasy, which is romance and fantasy together, in case you didn't know what that was. Um so
Clue.
it's getting mashed into one word, romantasy.
Okay.
And so romantasy is so popular right now with books like Fourth Wing and Court of Thorns and Roses and it just Court of Thorns.
Books
Yeah,
I'm
anyway.
not familiar with. I will share
Yeah.
a book series with you here in a little bit that is not.
Yeah. So, yeah, these books are very popular right now. And what I have read, they're a fun adventure. And I especially love Fourth Wing because it's dragons and all of that. But I'm like, the the love triangles are so toxic. This is
That
not the love and cherishing of a woman. This is a woman having to woman up, and she already knows everything, and now she just needs to drill it through these men's head, these guys, these
so
fairies, whatever they are.
often it is
And
toxic. I
yeah, it
mean,
is so
oh,
toxic. And then eventually, somehow or another, like he changes into not being so toxic, or it's they're toxic. They are not a good baseline
you
for a
know, it's the
relationship.
typical
It's a fun
women.
story,
Women tend
and
to want to go for the underdog. You know, they want to
the bad
go
boy,
the bad
the
boy, the
and
underdog. Yeah.
but so often what I see, yeah, and and that's fun to play with in a fictional world and everything. But as far as unrealistic expectations getting set, you need to go into these romance novels understanding that it is these are not expectations you need to be having on a man. Like
Or a
loving and
relationship
cherishing
at
you.
all. Even
Yeah.
a friendship relationship. Even
And
a friendship
yeah.
relationship.
And a lot of
Sometimes,
these women come out of these novels sometimes acting like, well, my man doesn't do enough for me. He needs to be acting like, Tamlin in the first Court of Thorns book. But we all know if you've read the Court of Thorns books, you know how Tamlin turns out. So, anyway, but they go in with this attitude, but then they will not hear any criticism perishable too. And you're not going to be that way all the time, but there at least needs to be the effort. And that's where I think a lot of these women kind of get lost in this, and not all. Not all. I see a lot of romanticy readers where them and their husband are enjoying the series, and obviously, you know, people there not everybody is taking expectations out of these books. But a lot of these guys do feel like, or have dealt, as in the case of my husband, have dealt with a previous wife or girlfriend who have put these expectations on them while not putting any expectations on themselves. So you need to get cut. You need to act like this character. You need to be this kind of guy for me, but then not be the abusive person. And then I don't need to do anything for you. I don't have to show up. I don't have to work on
cherry
myself.
picking.
I don't have to be the female main character. You just need to be the male main character and come save me. But
Yeah.
then I don't want to be saved because I'm a girl boss. So that is where these guys are so often, and my husband is one of these. So that is where these guys so often run into these unrealistic expectations. And obviously, like the one guy I talked to, not every guy gets the girl. So,
Yeah, I think what we need to remember is relationships, period. Not just romantic relationships. Let's just step back from the romantic relationships because you need practice with all kinds of relationships before you ever even consider a romantic relationship. You need to have good friendships. You need to know how to be a good friend. You need to know how to be a good daughter. You need to know how to be a good niece, nephew, aunt, granddaughter, whatever those relationships are in your life. A good student, a good team player, a good lab partner, things like that. If you're a waitress, you need to know how to be a good waitress. I hated waitressing, but I was good at it, you know, and that's kind of the point. Those are all,
treating our fellow humanity like they are cherished.
yes,
And we seem to
yes.
have forgotten how
we've
to do that. Uh,
we haven't even been taught. The last few generations haven't even been taught. In my generation, if you wanted to have a good job, if you wanted to be a good student, if you wanted to have a good life, then you had to check your own attitude and you had to decide that you were going to achieve that. So if you're climbing up the ladder, if you're doing this, if you're clawing your way up, and tearing other people down in order to build yourself up, uh, you're just going to end up with a pile on top of a pile of nastiness, is what that's going to be. You're not going to be queen of anything, you know. But if you're hand over hand helping other people up, and that's how you're getting up because you're working with other people and helping them have a better, in a work environment that can be sometimes work environments can be toxic. If you are the person that is trying to bring sunshine to that work environment, to that classroom environment, to that home environment, wherever it is, then you're going to benefit from that. You're going to become the cherished individual. I mean, sometimes that's good and sometimes it's not, because if you've got a toxic family like I had, then you become that person that everybody counts on whenever they need something, but then they don't want you around any of the rest of the time unless they want somebody to blame stuff on.
mhm.
So there are
It
those.
can be depending on where you are and the sort of people around you. It can be a dog eat dog world, but you can change that. It's
You
one of
can
those
change
things
your
that,
circle
you
of it.
know, I remember a particular friend whenever I was in my teen years, she was reading some of the Janet Oak romance novels and stuff. And while those aren't bad, I don't consider them bad. They're definitely not like the mainstream um
Her
sex
animal series
books.
for children are much better.
Mm. But she was pretty invested in those books and some other romance books at the time. I think Francine Rivers had a series out that was popular then, I
Francine
think.
Rivers goes into the historical stuff. It's
Sh
not
her
that
stuff's pretty good.
it
So,
is. It is
I like
much
her.
more realistic.
Yeah, yeah. So, but all that aside, my friend was very involved in a lot of the romance stuff. And meanwhile, I'm over there like I just really I wanted to kind of get into it with her so we would have something mutual to talk about, but I couldn't get into it. And in the meantime, I end up picking up like the book Boundaries by Dr. Henry Cloud and learning about boundaries. And then that led into boundaries in marriage and boundaries in dating and boundaries with kids. And then I end up picking up this book called Emotional Intelligence and learning all about that. And then years later, when she gets married, she has a breakdown about baby number three and is like, my relationship and everything is not what I thought it was supposed to be. This is not how it's supposed to be. And it's like, what'd you expect it to be? And it was supposed to be this magical, beautiful thing that she had read in these books. And those books had unknowingly, even though they were good, they're okay, they had unknowingly set
Unrealistic
unrealistic
expectations.
expectations. In the meantime, while she was reading those books, I'm reading these other books that are actually setting me up with realistic ideas of how the human brain works and how we can build our emotional IQ and how we can set healthy boundaries with people, how I can tell out toxic people from safe people and build better relationships and surround myself with better people and have a better work environment and all of this stuff. So she felt like, we were very close in age, so she feels like her life is falling apart. And I'm over here building the best life I have yet. Like I already had a pretty good life. And it just keeps getting better because I've learned how to build on top of these things. And that is where I think a lot of the romance stuff, especially for younger people, can
Yes,
unknowingly set those unrealistic
because
expectations.
young people are not. they're not done wiring yet. So filling up young minds with romance stuff is, I just don't feel like it's healthy because they're not
And I
actually
think,
mature enough for, they
and
need
I
to
think
see
having a
real life.
conversation with them, it's not
And
something you want to sit, you don't want to sit your poor teenager in the corner and be like, no, you only get to read nonfiction, boring books, my dear. It's for
well,
your brain.
and we didn't do that. We didn't
No,
do
I
that.
read
But
fantasy.
you
So
saw our relationship in our relationship grow. Paul and I are affectionate. Are they? And we're just outwardly, publicly affectionate. We always have been.
there was a
Um,
lot of PDA with them whenever I was growing
there's
up.
a lot of affection with us. Okay. Um,
But
and
then we also got to witness some doozy fights and stuff.
yes,
You know,
yes,
I got to, even as a teenager, I got to step back and go, okay, what do I like about my
and I
parents'
had a
relationship and what do
mentor.
I
Yes,
not?
and I had a mentor because we didn't fight in front of you guys for a long time. And I had a mentor that caught wind of that and she's like, "Oh my goodness, girl, no. They need to see you guys disagree. They need to see you fight every once in a while because they need to see the process of you guys making up. They need to see that you can
The
disagree
repair.
and that you,
And that
yes,
is what so many people, especially among the millennial, my generation, do not get is that soon as the relationship is on the rocks, and I feel like women
and they
especially,
just leave.
they just leave. They
They
quit the
just leave.
relationship. They either soft quit it, they mentally leave the relationship, they emotionally leave the relationship, or they physically leave it. And they just quit. Soon as they run into any conflict, soon as he does not agree with everything that they say, they're gone.
And usually in that case, the goal was marriage. The goal was the wedding. You
Hmm.
know, so many girls, the goal is the wedding. They have no idea what to expect out of that after that. We've got
Yeah.
10 minutes.
So many people do not know how to build an actual relationship with other people. We are seeing that now as the Gen Z generation are now coming out and being like, how do you build relationships? Like, this is actually a whole thing you can see on TikTok and other places where these kids are craving
Gen Z
connection.
is so smart. There's a few out there that are just totally off the rockers, and I'm sorry. But there are some of them that are so smart and they are
Yeah,
asking questions and they are
yeah.
asking the right questions and they are doing the research and they are trying to heal past
And I
things.
see a lot of them even opting to they're looking at what builds connection with people and they are like leaving their phones at home and going bowling instead or walking around town with their friends and
Hiking,
doing
things
these
like that. Yes.
old-fashioned ways of connecting with people.
Well, so many are
And
just getting rid of the electronics and going and starting a farm or whatever. And they might
yeah,
vlog about it or whatever, but they've got their hands in the dirt more than they have their eyes on the
yeah, on the
screen.
screen.
And that we all need to take note of that.
Need to go touch some grass.
Yes, go
So
touch some grass.
yeah, I think there has been a lot of, whenever somebody says that romance books set unrealistic expectations, we need to open up the conversation
Yes,
and
we
be
need to
like,
talk.
okay, is
And
it truly
this
that you don't
was,
want to love and cherish your wife? Or is it that you feel like she has so many expectations for you, but then none for herself, and you're not allowed to have any for her?
yeah.
And then
And
how
it may
can you
not be
open
that.
that
It might not be
conversation with
either one of
her?
those at all. It might be something completely different that he has to say. Listen to him. You know, I realized after a few back and forths with this particular author that she put that video out specifically for the people who, the Man Haters Club.
The Man Haters Club.
She put it out for the Man Haters Club, and all of them are just going, "Oh my goodness, I so understand what you're doing." It was very shallow. I did, and that's what she was
All
wanting,
men are just
shallow.
terrible,
Oh,
toxic
all men are just
creatures.
terrible. The only ones that are any good are the ones you write in books, and Okay, sweetie. You know,
And then you wonder why you're alone on Valentine's.
yeah, and
It
if you're not
just
happy being alone on the holidays or whatever, then you need to
they
get happy with yourself.
a lot
And
of the
once you're happy with
commenters,
yourself, then,
yeah.
you know,
And a lot of the commenters that I saw in her video, like they were also some of the ones that were like tooting their horns, like literally making noise instead of having a moment of silence for Men's Mental Health Month.
yeah.
So literally saying that they don't care about men's mental health.
Yeah, they have
So
no,
they don't think men are human anyway. So
yeah.
that's a whole
And
different
it's,
conversation to
yeah,
have
and
a
it's
different
not
time. But
trendy. Yeah, it's not trend. It has become trendy to think that everything that a man does is toxic. It's
yeah,
just become
it's
trendy.
starting to quickly lose ground, I'm
I hope
noticing
so.
though.
Kind of like the boss mom
It,
thing is not popular anymore. The
no,
trad wife thing on the other side, that's not popular anymore. Okay, we're
no,
not doing the trad wife thing. We're not doing the boss mom thing.
because
Let's
both
be
sides have
realistic.
gotten exhausted.
Yeah, everybody's tired, guys. We just
Yeah.
need to be
And
us.
again, the man haters club is starting to die out because there have been so many women now that are finding themselves alone and realizing, oh my gosh, I was being the problem. And then there's also all of these kids who grew up with their mom in just overwhelming
I
statistics
am
who
seeing
are
a lot.
realizing
I'm seeing
that
therapists that are talking about this is your problem with your mom, and your mom may never deal with this, you know? And so
a
we've
lot of
had
these
some,
kids are starting to figure out that my dad did so much for me and everybody just trashes on him
yeah, yeah.
in this man
And it's
haters club.
trendy. Again, it's trendy to hate your dad and hate everything that your dad stands for. So if your dad's a Christian, then you definitely can't be, and you have to be against everything that says it's quote unquote for Christian. You know, it's people. I mean, we're doing this in politics, we're doing this in everyday life stuff, we're doing this in everything where a subject is brought up and then people pick a side and start ranting. And if somebody just wants conversation, they get hit from both sides. And I'm getting that a lot here lately. So I must be on the right track, must be on the right track because what we want is conversation. So,
Yeah. So
yeah,
the point is to be working on yourself and making yourself a better person, Christian or not. I will have a lot of Christians argue with me on that, but you can work on yourself as a
so
person and work on being a better person. And in doing so, treating other people like they are cherished human beings
yes, yes, that love.
instead of an enemy.
Oh yeah, the love mantra that we need to love everybody. We need to love everybody. I heard it in the 70s. You know,
Hmm.
um, you need to start with knowing what respect for yourself is,
Hmm.
knowing what love means to you, and then being a loving person.
Yeah.
And there's going to be some people that you need to draw a boundary. And if you have a strong boundary, then those people can go their way. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you want welcoming, healthy relationships in your life, you have to be the healthy, good grief, Pistol. He's so itchy. I don't know if you can hear the clunk, 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 clunk. He's just, poor puppy. Um, you know, we have to look at the man in the mirror first. Remember Michael Jackson singing the song.
Hmm.
Look at the man in the mirror first. Take care of that person first, and be the person that you want to be, and and then have conversations with people. And
Yeah.
let's talk. I can have some of the best conversations with people who disagree with me on the biggest things, and I can sit and have hour-long conversations with them and really enjoy the communication that we have and learn something from them. Neither one of us changes our opinion or our ideas, but we can respect each other and we can appreciate each other's perspectives. And that's where we need to get. It
Hmm.
doesn't matter where the government is, it doesn't matter what's going on in the church or out of the church or anywhere else. We need to have these conversations. need
Yeah.
communication.
And
So
quite
important.
honestly, it's one of those things that if you can't have those conversations and communication with yourself, if you can't get down to the ugly parts that you don't like to face and have the hard conversations with yourself, you won't be able to have those with anybody else.
Right. And if you're
Just period.
struggling with that, Catherine is a life coach, certified life coach. So she can help with that. And if you're feeling isolated and you don't have other women to talk about these things with, I have a community. So check that out. We have
And
ways
if
that we can help.
and if you're into books and stuff and talking about stuff like this, I have a community on Patreon as well
All right.
for that.
We'll make
So I
sure
do
that
book
that's,
stuff.
yeah, book stuff. We will make sure that that is in the description so you can find all of that. Well, thank you for the communication and the conversation today, Catherine.
Thank you. I don't
So,
know how much communication it
I,
was as much as a rant, but it
everyone's,
gets it done.
at least it wasn't political. I had to get away from the political stuff.
I am so tired of politics. I'm
I
like,
know.
where is the red button? I will push it myself. Let's
Yes.
do this.
Oh my goodness. We'll see y'all in 2 weeks.